technical director. He said George Washington. I did not start broadcasting when George Washington was president because there were no broadcast facilities. There was no electricity at the time. No, my first president, let's see, if I began broadcasting in 82, so that would have been Ronald Reagan time. Yep. It's a happy time in America, I must say. Okay, let's begin. Sean, you sent me a, here we go, number 021.
When we meet the threat of the challenging climate we're all feeling, already ravaging every part of our world with extreme weather, or will we suffer the merciless march of ever-worsening droughts and floods, more intense fires and hurricanes, longer heat waves, and rising seas?
It's something that I broadcast regularly. Bjorn Lomborg and others who actually report on the science, that a lot of what he just said isn't true, but it doesn't matter because the left believes it. The left owns the media, and so people believe it. For example, more intense hurricanes, that's just not true. We are not experiencing more intense hurricanes. The intensity of fires, to the extent that they are more intense, has to do with the treatment of brush more than any other single thing. By the way, here I am in Texas where you guys had a freeze, didn't you? Yeah, how does one explain that? But anyway, we won't deal with that. The merciless march of ever-worsening droughts and floods. More people have water to drink today than at any time in the history of the human race, just for the record. Okay? There maybe, I don't know if there are ever worsening droughts. I do know that people have more water than at any time in history. That would seem to me to be what counts. All right, number 22.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy, of using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world.
I love that. We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. That's not true. We've ended 20 years of American troops in Afghanistan. We have not ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. I wish we did. The Taliban has taken over. That is exactly that would be like saying if Churchill had decided not to fight Hitler any longer. Well, we've ended all these years of conflict with Germany. Except when you have tyrants in charge, violent tyrants, you have not ended conflict. You have only ended your role in it. It shows the statement is fascinating. It's so incorrect that it really demands explanation. Why would somebody say something so incorrect? We have not ended 20 years of conflict. We have ended 20 years of American engagement, or at least direct engagement. And that is because basically most people, and I even include a lot of conservatives, really don't give a damn about Afghans. Something I've never quite understood. I am forthright about this. I think America should be the world's policeman. Because if America's not the world's policeman, there are two things that will happen. Bad people will become the world's policeman, or there will be no policemen and there will be just mass evil. So I fully plead guilty to the belief that America has a moral role to play in this world. And especially when it is at such little sacrifice as it was for the last couple of years in Afghanistan. We lost more people to the suicide bombing when Joe Biden said we would leave. In that day, we lost more servicemen than in the last year and a half, all put together. We're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy. Is there anybody who understands what that means? Relentless diplomacy with whom? With the Taliban? Yeah, that's actually one of those that he has in mind. Using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world. I must admit that I didn't understand most of his speech. That is one of the sentences. I have no idea what he was talking about. Number 23.
Over the last 8 months, I prioritized rebuilding our alliances, revitalizing our partnerships, and recognizing they're essential and central to America's enduring security and prosperity. We have reaffirmed our sacred NATO alliance to Article 5 commitment.
How many people in that audience understood Article 5 commitment? But in any event, we have reaffirmed our sacred NATO alliance. Do you know that every NATO ally that I have read about, with the possible, I can't even think of an exception, thought that the American withdrawal from Afghanistan was an insult to NATO because none of them were in fact asked, should we do it, let alone should we do it the way we did it? I watched the House of Commons and the condemnations of Joe Biden made by members of Parliament, not to mention in the House of Lords. This notion of rebuilding our alliances, I don't think that they have been weaker at any time in my lifetime than already in the last 6 months. Number 24.
We rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement, and we're running to retake a seat in the Human Rights Council next year at the UN.
Okay, look, obviously he's on the left. He believes in the Paris Climate Agreement, so I have nothing to say. We're running to retake a seat at the Human Rights Council. Well, it's an interesting question whether we should be on the Human Rights Council. It is usually, the Human Rights Council is usually headed by a tyrannical regime. And so nothing moral is done in the Human Rights Council. Nothing for human rights is done at the Human Rights Council, and that is why the United States left. So maybe we should be on it, but I want you to know why we're not on it. Number 25.
U.S. military power must be our tool of last resort, not our first. And it should not be used as an answer to every problem we see around the world.
So this is a perfect example of the straw man argument. When exactly has military power been our first resort? I can't think of any time. Second, it should not be used as an answer to every problem we see around the world. Has anybody ever advocated that the use of American military power be used as an answer to every problem we see around the world? What is he reacting to?